Hey guys, what's going on? Tony Handy's here from LazyTechGuys.com, and this is a special edition of the LTG Show. The LTG Show is brought to you by Audible.com. Get your free trial at audibletrial.com/lazy. They have over 150,000 Audible books to choose from your periodicals, nonfiction, science fiction, and more. You ever want to contact us? Call us at 707-722-LAZY or email us at comments@lazytechguys.com. And you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and, of course, YouTube. My name is Tony Hannity. I'm the editor-in-chief of this beautiful website, and today we are graced to have in our presence Mr. Redford Castro.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. It's good to see you back on the feed. It's been a while, and we'll see how your chops are when when it comes to podcasting. Yeah, but now, truth be told, you messaged me about Google I/O, and you sounded actually a lot more enthusiastic than I was, which is kind of interesting, because I don't want to call it a snores fest because that's putting too much of a dig into it. I think what Google has done in the past has set a level of expectation where we're going to see skydivers, or we're going to get all this free stuff, and there's going to be some amazing announcements. And for the most part, there were some pretty cool things, which we'll talk about, but there wasn't anything that was wowing. So for those who haven't seen Google I/O, let's go ahead and dive right into it. So I think the first thing that I want to touch on was something that he mentioned in the, I guess not the pre-show, but in the intro was the fact that on Chromecast now, or rather through the Google Play Store, HBO Now is available.
That's a nice one.
That is a nice one. Now, have you ever thought of cutting that cable and just going all in with Google HBO Now, or is it not financially like a sound adjustment for you?
Well, it's more of a situational adjustment, so it just really depends, right? And, everyone's mileage may vary, but at least for myself, I'm more of sports, so HBO is sort of secondary. And when I say secondary, I mean the kind of shows I'd watch would be Bill Maher, Real Time, Vice, Game of Thrones, and things like that. But I guess, yeah. But in terms of its value, it's definitely worth it. At the moment, I'm actually sampling what it's like to have, not have cable and still have cable, if that makes any sense. So I'm on, Sling TV, and I also have a subscription with HBO now. And I imagine that once I cut off cable, I mean, it should be a pretty seamless transition. I'm on Hulu Plus and I have Netflix. But to me, I guess, it just depends on each person. But for myself, since I'm into sports, I'm just kind of curious on some of the other streaming services on how that's going to be as opposed to just on demand. But HBO, I mean, it's awesome. I mean, more shows are going to come out. There's actually one show I'm not sure if you're going to be interested in checking it out. It's particularly called Ballers, with Dwayne Johnson coming on it. And that's something definitely that's just going to add more value to what I'm going to be subscribing to. So.
Well, if The Rock is involved with anything, I'm there.
It's worth a shot for sure.
Yeah. They just kind of going all-encompassing. HBO Now is not just available for Google, but it's also available for the PS4 and the Xbox One. So just making sure that we cover all those bases. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of Google I/O. Android M was announced today as a developer preview, and they basically outlined a bunch of improvements, not only to the UI but also to the back end of Android M, and we're going to kind of cover some of those things. One fact is that they're going to be doing support for USB Type-C, which makes complete sense because they were probably the second major company to come out with a product with USB Type-C, which was their Chromebook Pixel 2. They also will have native fingerprint sensor support. And I've got to say, like, when I had that with my Galaxy Note 4, the fingerprint versus typing in a password every time was a godsend. Now, you could argue that the Galaxy Note 4 fingerprint scanner was kind of a hit or miss, and it was, but it's the fact that when it did work, it was just really nice and easy. You didn't have to, you know, use two hands to type in a password. Just use your thumb. So I'm definitely glad that they're going to be implementing that, not only to just sign into your phone, but also for you to buy things through Android Pay, which we'll talk about. Passwords, just getting into Facebook, and buying things online as well too.
It's awesome. I think so. Pretty much, they're just moving along with the evolution of how people are using devices, right? And now Google just wants to remove that limitation from the software level. Now it's up to the hardware level, the hardware guys to actually make effective use of the software.
Right, and then from the hardware all the way down to the processor chip of Qualcomm, their processor supports fingerprint scanning as well. So it goes hand in hand. It just makes sense. And to have that from an OEM level, or not OEM, but from an OS level versus an OEM level, it should have a better integration. I mean, that's a theory, right?
Hmm. And a side note, I heard that Qualcomm was actually hurting based on some of Samsung's moves on the chipset that they're using. Like they're no longer using Qualcomm's licensing. So now they just everything is all Samsung based inside their phone as opposed to using some of the I guess Qualcomm's licensing, which is interesting.
Right. I
So
mean, you're right about that. Samsung started using their Exynos processors on the Galaxy S6 and the S6 Edge. But I mean, if you look at the whole full scale of what Qualcomm's in,
mm-hmm.
although Samsung was the number one vendor for Android, they're not the number one. They're not. I wouldn't say they would encompass all the other OEMs that Qualcomm has partnerships with. So I don't know the exact facts on the numbers, but I'm sure it hurt them, but I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
it's like it's the
Oh yeah,
worst thing in the
it's not
world.
bankruptcy or anything of that sort, but it did send their like stock reeling big time. And it's just really interesting to see that because they literally live and survive through their licensing business.
They do, yeah. I mean, Intel's doing that too, right?
Yes, that's
And
correct.
that's why Intel's like, we should have gone mobile like 10 years
Yes,
ago.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, well, I told you.
yeah,
No
I
one
know, and
wanted
it's
to listen to
surprising when
me.
like whatever companies are still sticking with them right now. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, they got Apple, on their laptops and most of the OS X type based platforms, and then of course now you have Windows that are kind of sort of going away from ARM and more going
Hmm.
towards like the Haswell based, all the different spectrum of Haswell based chipsets, which is going to be very, very interesting to see how this all plays out. So,
Right. Now, they also mentioned that in Android M, there's going to be better app permission.
mm,
Now, the argument is, and we've seen this over the past year, especially with the likes of the Facebook Messenger app, when you install the Facebook Messenger app, it automatically asks for permission to get access to your camera, your calendar, your contacts. And, me being me, I don't care. Fine, I just want to use it. But there were a vast majority of people who said, no, I don't want you getting into my contacts. There's no reason for you to, unless I specifically ask you to. And
mm-hmm.
on iOS, it asks me when I want to. And Android should do that, and that's basically what they're doing now. They're kind of pulling an iOS move, and to some degree that can be better. It could also be kind of a Windows Vista experience where it's asking for permissions every other time. But I'm sure it'll become streamlined. I mean, we've all learned from that kind of hiccup with ask me again later or things like that. So.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good move for Google to do this, especially for developers being a little bit more transparent in their applications.
Do you think it's almost like just kind of the evolution of things, or do you think it's more of less just hearsay? I mean, not hearsay, excuse me, but just basically, abiding by those people who were, I guess, the paranoid. I call them the paranoid and label them that way because some people want to be able to see a prompt saying, "Hey, you're secured because you're clicking this prompt box, right?" But
Right.
as you remember in the past, people just kind of sublimely click on those things in the same way people accept terms of services, right? So it's the same way you install software. You're going to say yes, to say, yeah, I'm going to have it install this thing, I'm going to allow it to do it. So I'm not sure if that really adds as much transparency as it is just to be able to say, yeah, I just made this checkbox since I made this contract with you to say this thing is secure because we've gone through, we're now compliant, with your company. So
Yeah,
what
I
do you think
think.
about
Go on.
that? Oh, go ahead. Yeah, so I think I just part of me thinks that, you know, um, when we have to go through these several prompts, it just seems almost what do you call it? Um, well, I don't want to say anti-user. I would say less user-friendly. And in an interesting move, Bank of America actually are stepping back from, this so-called quote-unquote intrusive security by
Mm.
actually going away from a two-step authentication to just a single. So, which is interesting because it's a bank and millions of people use them. So I'm just wondering, like, if Google is doing this because, this is just kind of like what they have to go through. These are the contracts. These are the only way they could lock these SLAs with these companies. You know what I mean? Because they have to do these things. I mean, they're a bigger company now, right? So these other companies that are these Fortune 500 companies that are now starting to trust Google are like, well, let's give it a shot now. They have all of these things that Microsoft is now doing. Let's go ahead and take a chance because the really huge ones, they're still on Microsoft. They're still have yet to try like Google Apps as their enterprise, stuff.
Mhm.
So, so it's interesting to hear that stuff. It's really, really interesting. So when I read about the news, I was like, wow, okay, they're gonna be
I
going through.
think.
But once people get used to it, it's gonna be like, you know,
Well, yeah. Once people get used to anything, it becomes a thing of the past, and we look back at it. It's like, oh my God,
yeah. No, it's just
how did we bitch and moan about this? It's not a big deal,
exactly,
or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
I just think it's like it's just basically I wouldn't say okay, maybe I have to take back intrusive. I just think it's just sort of the evolution of how, what Google has to go through to get their
Well,
SLAs going.
you used to be an iOS user, and to a degree, I think aren't you still an iOS
I still
user?
am. I'm an everything user.
Right. So does it bother you when you install an app for your kids and the application asks for permission and to use the camera because it's a fun selfie application or something like that?
Right,
Does
right.
that bother you, or is it just something that you're like, oh, okay, just click yes because
Yeah,
that's the only way
yeah,
you can use
right.
the app?
Well, it's not something that happens often, right? Like if my kid is going to install something like that every day, it's not a big deal. But since it's a one-time thing, it's different. Now, for
Right. And
something, for
this seems to
instance,
be the
yeah,
same way. It
yeah,
seems to be that if you allow permissions to the camera from this point on, if you say yes, it will access your camera. It's not going to
yeah,
be like every time you
yeah,
start up the application.
yeah.
What you
But there's
said
a
earlier,
difference. Yeah, there's a difference though between asking your camera and asking user permissions to access certain parts of the system to access data. You know what I mean? The camera is one thing, but to be able to, have the developer say, well, we need to ask this question because we don't want to get our developers in trouble. We don't want to get ourselves in trouble. We want to meet compliance and ISO standards with these OEMs and SLAs. So it's like, that's just kind of what they have to do. They're at that level now, like they're at the highest level now, right? So to play with the really big boys, they have to, cross their T's and dot their I's. And if that means having for us to click the button, that's not a big deal at the app level. I think it's a really big deal, like more at the enterprise level when you start doing these really complex apps or when you start doing stuff with the browser.
well, yeah, I just came back from a developer conference on Windows 10 for
Mm.
enterprise, and it's all about, especially with BYOD, it's
Oh,
all
yeah,
about permissions.
yeah,
It's all about that, being able to copy and paste from your email to like your Facebook page, like no, no,
yeah,
no, don't let them do that, things like that.
yeah, yeah. And what's
Um,
really interesting too, dude, is that today I just literally noticed, and this is the sad part of it, I just noticed that Google revamped their entire security. Like when you edit your settings before, you would just have this little small tabs of like, here's where you can allow something, here are some things you can revoke access to. And now you have this huge gamut, like this huge screen where it says, learn about security. Here are the like devices that you could add so you don't have to revoke them. Here are typical devices that you can add. If you have a app that's less secure, you're going to have to prompt that it's less secure on Google now, and
right.
then create a token and add that device into your settings, which is good. I mean, it's good and bad, but at the same
Yeah,
time, I just know that's what Google has to do now.
right.
So, but it's fascinating.
Cool. Another thing that they announced regarding Chrome, you can get Chrome in your apps. What does that mean? So if you use the Pulse news app, which is what I use in lieu of Flipboard and Feedly and things like that, if I click on an article, it obviously gives me the first couple of paragraphs, and then I click on another link to see the full view of the article. It gives me a web view of that article within the Pulse app, and there are times when it does that. I either go to the full website, which obviously takes a lot longer because I'm on mobile, or it just brings me to this gobbledygook that I can't even read, or just doesn't even load. Now with Android M, you as a developer can integrate Chrome into your application, so it's not going to a web view. It's actually using Chrome, and via the fact that if it's using Chrome, you'll have all the benefits of Chrome. So if there's a password that is needed to be typed in, and that individual says that their passwords to Chrome, which I don't recommend doing, but if you do, fine. Then it would automatically allow you to, single sign in there. It's just going to load a lot quicker as well too. So this is just another example that at least if you live in Chrome, then it's a good thing. But if you are, an Opera browser user or Firefox on Android, then you might not like it so much. Somebody brought up the fact that if you're looking at what's called Pinterest, and you're on the Pinterest app, you're going through the Pinterest servers, but then if you click on a link and it takes you through the Chrome web app within the app, then you're kind of also going through the Google servers. And for security and privacy issues, depending on what kind of board you're in, maybe you don't want Google knowing what kind of board you're in. I don't know if that's really the case or not, but
how does it know? So wait, you're saying like if someone is inside the Chrome app, they're gonna browse typically like a browser would browse, right?
Right, yeah.
For Pinterest, but then when they go into the Pinterest app, so it's different. Like so they're still pushing through Google services through the Pinterest app, or I mean,
well,
is it just different
the
for
way
Android platform?
the way that I'm understanding it right now is that um, even though that you're on Android, if you're using Pinterest, if Pinterest has their own server, then you're getting all the information directly through Pinterest. You're not having to feed it through Google. And now with this Chrome in-app capability, if you click on a link within the Pinterest app, then you're going back to using Google services and the Google servers, and
Okay. I see what Google is doing then. So for them, for those who are building on Android and they don't want to build any more, they don't want to extend the app anymore, they can just rely on the responsive web version of their app. You know what I mean?
right,
They say, wait, kind of how you're going through, Windows Phone has a lot of apps that are like that, where, you're a lot of the developers, and I hate to say this, sometimes like to shortcut things, right? So you're going through some stuff, but then there are some cases where you'll go through some apps and have to see more detail, right? To recreate that detail on the app takes quite a bit to do. So instead of doing that, they sometimes just link to the web, and it's really just a browser inside the app minus the address bar, minus all of the Chrome and trimmings that you would see in a typical browser. And you're clicking on it and thinking that you're inside the app, but you really aren't. It's just basically a browser with an embed inside your app. You know what I mean?
right.
So it's a smart move.
It's a wrapper, basically. Yeah.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So that it'll be interesting to see. The way that Android is, I don't know if this means that you have to use Chrome in your apps. Maybe they'll still allow you to use your own web browser within your app. But either way, I think for someone who is completely invested into Chrome, as myself, I'm totally fine with it. I mean, whatever you can do to make the overall experience flow a lot easier, and have like my settings, I might have those. Have the usability of the UI the same whether I'm using it through the web or through the application I'm in favor of all that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, USB-C is going to be supported, but they also mentioned that there's a new feature called Doze, which will improve battery life. They said with the Nexus 6 running Lollipop to a Nexus Nexus 9 running Lollipop to a Nexus 9 running the new Android M, it actually lasted 2 hours longer on standby. So Android's been known as the ultimate open, multi-purpose platform in the case that when you close out of an app, especially in Lollipop, it's not closed. There's been times where I've started a ping pong game on my G4 over here, and 3 days later I go back to the same ping pong game, and I'm still where I was when I
Yeah.
paused the game 3 days ago.
And,
iOS doesn't do that.
yeah,
Windows
because
Phone,
Android keeps the process IDs. Like
they
so when
do, and but when that happens, it draws the battery. Although it's like in dormant mode or sleep mode, it does draw the battery. But now, apparently, with Doze, it's going to be a lot better in terms of battery constraints and things like that. So obviously, in a real-world situation, we're going to have to, put it to the test.
hmm
For me, anytime I hear we have new battery technology, I kind of shrug, I'm like, okay,
no,
because
they're cheating it. Yeah, they're
yeah, I mean,
cheating it. They're probably going to take it virtual memory style. It's a lot
and
of, it's doing
even
what
if
all these
they
laptops have been doing for years.
And the thing is, I haven't, with all the battery technology, in terms of like the software improvements, it still comes down to we have a lithium-ion battery. That's the same technology there, and it's you're kind of dressing up a pig. It's still gonna, especially over time, you're still gonna get battery rot. It's not gonna be the best battery that it was when you first bought the device. Luckily, with some devices, you can exchange the batteries, but you can't with tablets, you can't with the Nexuses or anything like that. So I wouldn't get too excited about this. Um, to be honest with you, I get excited about phones having 3,500 milliamp batteries. Like, okay, well, it's a big f off phone, but it's going to last me a day and a half. That I can live with. But if
Yeah,
you're
it's going to
trying
be
to tell me that
interesting.
3,000 milliamp 3,000 milliamp battery with Doze is going to last me a day and a half, I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Especially with all the
Uh,
things that I do.
Question to you. Do
Yeah.
you think that smartphones are evolving much faster than the way PC hardware has over the years? So you know how in the PC world they have what they call Moore's law,
Right.
basically where, you know,
Doubles.
just everything, the technology, the ramp up, the speed it climbs at an exponential rate.
Right.
Now, to me, the smartphone seems like even way faster than that. And just going through some of the one question that was tossed by a brilliant developer while I was watching a live stream, between the I guess the one of the classes I was checking out. One of them was one of the questions they had was, do you think that Android is simply throwing all this stuff in there because they know that the hardware is just going to get faster and faster, and eventually it's just going to end up the software doesn't really have to worry so much about the hardware itself. You know what I mean? Because they could just do it. They could just put virtual memory in there, and if it goes to sleep, it just sits in the hard drive. The hard drives will just be faster. You know what I mean? The bandwidths are going to be quicker between each of the components inside the devices. So it's almost very synonymous from what Windows went through when it was going through that. You know what I mean? Like everything was taking these higher requirements, and people were like, "Man, we're never going to be using this much here," but now you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, if they implement all these upgrades in the software and they set an expectation of what the software is going to do, then I
Yeah.
expect that within the first, iteration of that new software, it's going to do it. The problem is in the last couple of launches of Lollipop, it just, especially with the first launch of Lollipop, battery was terrible. I mean, there was a lot of things wrong with Lollipop. This is why you only have like 10 to 11% of devices worldwide on Lollipop. OEMs are
Oh.
scared to update. It's really low, and they've improved upon that. But they set these, they make these promises, and it's like, okay, great, but as you said, if the hardware can't support it, then we have to upgrade the hardware, and so we're kind of trying to play catch up with something that wasn't even there in the first place. Now, if the hardware gets there and the hardware is optimized for it, then to a certain degree, this is where the operating system development team can say, okay, now that we have hardware that can support this, that can support 4K video with a 3,000 milliamp battery, and it can last all day, let's have an operating system that supports it from the core.
hmm
That's what but we're
Do,
not doing that. We're
do you
coming
think?
out with these devices that have 2K and 4K resolution,
Mm,
and it just sucks the battery. But it's okay because it has 2K, 4K resolution, and your phone doesn't. I mean, that's the Samsung Galaxy S is the perfect example of that. Non-removable battery, great screen, terrible battery life. you know. And so if we get to the point where we use something other than lithium ion, or yeah, if something like that other than lithium ion, something that is a lot more trustworthy long term and everything, then having things like non-removable batteries won't be an issue anymore. You know, iOS users would probably argue that, you know, they haven't had removable batteries since 2007, but then I would argue, well, yeah, but then after a year of your phone, you have battery issues, which is why we have, you know, things like this, battery chargers everywhere you go, or the Mophie. That's why these companies are in business, because of things like that. So um, it's, you know, there's always going to be catch up, whether it's, you know, the hardware first or the software first. But I think what it is doing is that it is innovating, right? And so by having these things like Doze, it's like, okay, Google wants Doze. What can we do as the battery manufacturer or whatever to, you know, really improve our battery life so Doze looks a lot better? Until then, they'll do the virtual memory thing, fine. But you know, a year, 2 years from now, we don't want to, you know, cut corners and kind of cheat. We really want the battery to last a lot longer. So, moving on. Now, they mentioned something called Google Now on Tap. This was very interesting, and I'm actually just going to read what The Verge says, because me trying to explain it from memory is going to be very difficult. So, Google Now is getting smarter, and it is going to be incorporated throughout the phone through a program called Now on Tap. With Now on Tap, you can hold the home button, bring up Now cards with relevant information, whether you're in an app, email, web browser. For example, if someone emails you about going to a movie, something Now displays information whether about what was mentioned, with links to the YouTube trailer, ratings. So the demo that they did on stage was that they were using they were playing Spotify, and Skrillex was on Spotify, and the demoer, you know, held the home button down, brought up Google Now essentially, and said, "What is his real name?" He didn't have to say what is Skrillex's real name, just said, "What is his real name?" And Google Now said, "Oh, well, you're not talking about Tony Danza. You're talking about Skrillex. So Skrillex's real name is Sonny something. I know his first name is Sonny, which is not very hip, but whatever." I think this is really cool. It crosses like the creepy line a little bit, right? Because now it's reading everything. Because do you think they're indexing everything, or are they looking it up on the fly? That's my question.
So the thing I'm trying to understand now too is Now on Tap based on, I guess, the oddities or nuances of data that's coming from the app itself. So if I'm firing up, say, I don't know, Foursquare, right? And I
Right.
say, tell me who are the last 5 people who checked in on the areas around me. It'll know that? Is it
That's
going to
the
do that?
idea.
So that means then there has to be data sharing that's happening between the
Right,
app and
and
that.
the app indexing is all part of that.
Okay. So then that means like, you know, obviously when you're on the Android platform, now all of these different classes the developers can now tap, right? And we
Hmm.
could say like, okay, Google now is allowed to do this and this and this, right?
Right.
In the same way how Cortana works, right? So like when you're inside, like if you download the Engadget, you could say, Engadget, show me my last headlines, and it just does it. You know what I mean? So in the difference, I think the difference I'm seeing now between the Windows Phone philosophy and Google Now's is that Google Now is explicitly asking you to go into the app first, and then you're just doing stuff, right? Then you start asking Google a bunch of things, right? But on the other side, Windows is asking you just ask it freely, like you say the app name and some stuff. You know what I mean? So Google Now seems to be a little bit more smarter, only because you're explicitly going into this to the app, right? And then you're gonna think of some sort of natural phrase to come up with that will hopefully give you an answer that's accurate, right? And I think that's probably smarter because, I mean, as you're adding more apps into your phone, right? It Some of these app names can sound similar, right? So Cortana can have issues over, hey, did you say this or that? You know what I mean? So,
Right, and one thing that you mentioned when we all started kind of comparing Siri to Google Now to
mhm,
Cortana was one of your favorite bakeries, Townsend Bakery, right?
Yes. Right.
And the joke was, you would ask, navigate to Townsend Bakery, and it would
Right.
navigate to like Towns and
And
Bakery.
bakeries.
Like,
Yeah.
no, it's completely wrong. What this is doing is, it's basically like you could, if I were to email you, or I guess Google Hangout you, hey, let's go to Townsend Bakery, um, you would be able to hold it down, and even without having to say anything. Like they did it verbally, but there's the ability for you to kind of highlight as well too, the query. So you would highlight the words, and then you would hold down the Google Now button and say, oh, you want to know more about this, and it would pull up on the bottom portion of the screen, Townsend Bakery. Here are directions. Here's the Yelp review. Maybe not Yelp, but Zagat review, and things like that. So uh, I think because of that machine learning, it's going to be a lot better. And the developers themselves, I believe they have to add some code into their app
Yeah.
for it
You would have
to
to.
do that,
You
which
would
makes
have to.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
they have to.
You would have to
But
expose certain types of data into it, for it to be indexed, right? So,
now, coming from a non, techie slash developer, mindset, do you think that the average person will look at this and say, "Wow, this is really useful"? Like I did,
I was so glad because that was the next thing I was going to ask you, actually. And one of the things that come to my mind is, what is going to be the percentage of people that are going to use this, like, and where's going to be the practical use cases? You know what I mean?
I still come across people that have Android phones and don't use Google Now. Like
Nope.
they don't even know that it's there, especially like the Samsung Galaxy phones, because the Galaxy phones, if you hold down the home button, then I think now it brings up Google Now, but
Yeah.
before it used to
But by
bring up,
default, it's Google. Yeah.
right, but
Brings the
before it was
same
S
thing.
Voice, and people are like,
Yes,
oh, I
voice.
don't
That's
even know
right.
what S Voice is,
Yeah.
and it was kind of buried in Samsung. And then when I showed it to people with the Galaxy S5 and things like that, it's
Right.
like, oh, well, this is like Siri. I'm like, yes, it's like Siri, but it's better than Siri because boom, boom,
Right.
boom.
Right. But it's
Um,
still another layer of friction, right?
it's
So,
a layer of friction because the
yeah.
more that they use it, they're like, oh wait, it's also looking at all of my web searches, and
Yeah.
it, why is it going through my email? Like, well, it's telling you that you have a bill due. Yeah, yeah, but I don't know if I want that. I'm like, well, you have a bill due. Were you gonna pay
I
it?
got
I
a
mean,
notification that just asked me something. Am I supposed
yeah,
to pay
and
this?
I mean,
Don't pay
similar
it.
to what Cortana
Yeah.
does, you can opt in and opt out of certain things, but
Yes.
I think that's what it comes down to. Is
Yes.
is the and although the argument is kind of weak, I would kind of go with the idea of if you don't want it, don't use it.
Yes.
That's the argument. That's
I agree.
this
I agree.
technology is here to aid or hinder you depending on your point of view.
Yeah.
And if you feel that it is infringement of your privacy,
You have that
you didn't
control.
even know about Google Now 3 months ago. So
Exactly.
so you know what? The way that you turned it on, there's also a way to turn it off. So
Exactly.
calm down.
You're just because you discover something doesn't mean it should lead to your disappointment. You know what I mean? You
No,
got to, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that are like that they don't realize that, oh, you know what? Had you not discovered that feature, you probably wouldn't have been upset in the first place over it coming through these things.
right.
It's a perception, right?
Oh
And
yeah, totally.
it's just one of those things. But
We're going to go through a few things real quick. Offline maps. So Google Maps is now going to offer offline maps in the near future. So it even will allow you to do onboard GPS navigation. So if you
street
go into the
level?
Philippines, hmm?
What about street level? No? Yes?
You mean Street View?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
That would be nuts.
That would be insane, but I don't know. I mean, how much data that would be on your phone.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
I was right before our podcast. I was rewatching that segment where she showed, pretend we're in Mexico City and we want to go to this museum. And they, what was really cool was that although she was in airplane mode, she would type in the first like 3 letters of the museum, and then there would be an auto-populated suggestion list, and the museum was in that suggestion list. So even though that you're not logged in, it will still suggest certain places to you. You can also get reviews of those places, even though you're not logged in. And like I said, GPS navigation to those places. Street View, I'm not quite sure. I think that would be a little bit much because the whole idea of offline, they've done it with YouTube as well, especially in emerging markets, in the sense that they want to be able to get to these eateries or these other places of
Yeah,
business, and and really hard to reach places when it comes to cellular signal, and
right.
there's no maps, or you want to watch. You want to watch something to further your education, but you have no internet at your home. Your only internet is
Yeah,
at the library. So now
yeah,
you can offline it up to, for maps, I don't know what the time frame is if you have like a week to keep it offline. But for YouTube in the places like Philippines, India, and I believe another country, you can offline it for up to 48 hours. So that's cool. So they're going to do offline maps worldwide, which is kind of similar to what Here Maps did, Nokia's Here Maps did, which was one main reason why Here Maps was still a winner in a lot of people's books. Like, look, I
yeah.
can I can offline this whole freaking country if I want to.
Well, I mean,
So
just everyone still, even till this day, offline maps are considered the most reliable. You know what I mean? And I mean, like, law enforcement, all these guys, government agencies, researchers, Forest Service, those guys, I mean, they rely on Garmin still, but now this puts it out of the water. Like, they've been wanting to
yep.
do something like that, and now it's offline. I mean, you talk about the emerging markets. Whatever happens in emerging markets happens in our market too. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Even just the slightest thing, to me, it's a big deal. It's a huge deal because, now how does that work with developers that want to do geolocation and stuff like that? Can we just rely on Google Maps now? Can we just pull all that data into our app and just say it's here, and I don't need a connection. I just needed your freaking GPS coordinates. You know what I mean? I mean, that's super powerful to say.
Yeah,
To
if
be able
it's
to do
able to
that.
tap in even after the fact when it's offline, that would be pretty amazing.
That would be
If
nuts.
it's able to like triangulate you somehow, like over Wi-Fi or something, because
Yeah,
they have that ability over Wi-Fi to
yeah.
triangulate.
It's totally doable. I mean, these maps are not certainly super huge, but even if you just had not even just a satellite layover, but even just the vector-based versions of all of these maps. I mean, and you had them embedded in whatever app. I mean, it's super powerful. You
Yeah,
can
I mean
start getting
that's
heat maps of where people are shopping. I mean, that's how
oh
powerful this
totally.
can be.
That
It's
could
ridiculous.
be the make or break decision whether your family gets food tonight or not.
It's so true. It's funny.
The other thing that they mentioned regarding offline was the fact that they're optimizing Chrome for emerging markets as well. So they're minimizing the amount of the data bits that are going through, between the phone and your cellular network. So if you pull up the Google search here in the United States, we're going to get the full-fledged Google search because we have a much larger infrastructure. But out there in the in the countryside of the Philippines, you have like one cell tower, but you still
Yeah,
want to look up something, you'll get a simplified version of the search. You'll still get the same search results, but you'll get
yeah,
less pictures and less descriptions, but it'll load a lot faster, it'll run a lot smoother, and it won't eat up your bandwidth so much. So that's really cool that they're doing that
yeah.
for those markets as well.
Yeah, the
Um,
big
it,
thing too. Yeah, the big thing too is that Google needs to. They've been wanting to build data centers overseas, but it's really hard to find like a government that's not going to gouge them for to meet city compliance and all this other stuff, all these ridiculous compliance because they know they have the money to charge them for it. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, I would hear these ridiculous stories on how all these companies are trying to set up data centers overseas but can't. So, relying on Europe, which is the closest thing to have that's more reliable and have the skill set to be able to manage those data centers. So, but man, just having one like in the Philippines, just having one would change like the entire landscape. It would be that's how crazy that would be. But I mean, all the stuff that you're mentioning is really interesting because when you jump these little emerging markets, really they can end up they can they send huge uh, they can send waves of more business coming from to our way. You know what I mean? Because as more
oh,
people can
totally. I mean, this
and
is the internet. We're all
yeah,
interconnected.
yeah,
So
I
if
mean
yeah, definitely.
more
If
hits for lazy tech guys is huge business for us. I mean, it just creates new fans, and that person can recommend it to other people that have never heard of it, and it just opens up the internet even more. We're not even close to scratching the surface. We're
right.
just not there yet. But to get everyone connected, that's like it's like for us, we take it for granted every day. You know what I mean?
Right.
These guys, I mean, just to get in, like, there's these people that are trying to have revolutions, and they're doing it through their text phone. You know what I mean? They're just
Hmm.
texting it through their phone and stuff because that's all they got.
Yeah.
So, but it's fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff.
Well, it also will help in those markets that are taking advantage of internet.org too.
That's
So
right.
if they're
That's a
using
big one, man.
internet.org and they're getting free services through
There's
those
a war
particular
coming, man.
regulatory websites, and then they go back to Google, it's going to charge them, but it's not going to charge them as much. So that's still really cool.
Oh man, I mean, there's a war coming, dude, between those companies.
Oh
It's
yeah.
just if it hasn't already, you know what I mean? There's already small battles, but there's already a bigger one that's happening. That
Oh yeah.
you know.
Now, I would say the big whoopah or the flying crazy punch was something that we already knew, which was the Photos app is being
Hmm.
subsumed, something away from Google
Subsidized,
Plus.
or was
So,
it subsidiary, something like that?
well, I kind of no, it's being not sunsetted because it's obviously still a
A
thing.
subset? Okay.
A subset to a degree that you can now access all of your photos uploaded to Google Photos, which is no longer solely connected to Google Plus,
Hmm.
absolutely for free, and not only on Android but also iOS. So there's a new Google Photos app that you can download for free. If you have an Android phone right now, you should and you have signed into Google Plus. There's already the Windmill application that is Photos. That app should be updated by the end of day if you haven't pushed it out already. What this allows you to do is you can upload unlimited amount of photos and videos for free, photos up to 16 megapixels and videos up to
Hmm.
1080p for
Okay.
free. You can
Okay.
organize them on a timeline, and very similar to how the iOS organization app is in Photos on iOS,
Yeah.
you
Yes. Yeah.
could pinch to zoom and look
Hmm.
at the blocks of your photos on a month-by-month basis.
Hmm.
I actually downloaded an app on my Nexus 6 um, called A Plus Gallery. And the reason why I downloaded that was specifically for the reason that I know it's hard to see, but I could pinch my photos, and it's not even doing it now. But it's not even doing it now. What the heck? Making me a liar. Oh, here you go. I could pinch my photos kind of and see them
That's very
in
iOS.
kind of a month view. Now I can uninstall this because Photos does that natively. Um, so you can still upload photos in RAW, but that's going to take up memory. That's going to go against your actual allotment of your free gigabytes or whatever that you have with Google Drive
Oh,
and things like that.
that's gonna be
Um,
so weird and kind of hard to understand. So for people that just don't know anything about photos, and all of a sudden they buy an SLR, you know what I mean? And they don't know they're shooting in RAW, you know what I mean? It's
so
like,
let
hey,
me tell you how they describe it,
okay.
because when I set it up, they asked me, no, okay,
So a phone
so
user, it's perfect, right? Like you know you're gonna be shooting at this megapixels are not gonna be this high. You know you're gonna be shooting 1080p.
So
That's perfect.
when you set up the new Photos app, what it asks you is upload size. Do you want high quality? High quality is deemed to be great visual quality at reduced file size, which is free unlimited storage, or original. Original quality is full resolution that counts against your quota. And apparently
I
I have
see.
110 gigabytes left.
That
I don't know
makes
how I got
absolute
110.
sense then. That's just
Right.
like the flicker
And
direction, yeah.
exactly. And that's what I told Victor, because he was like, I'm moving everything off Flickr. I'm like, well, hold on,
Hold on a
because I
second.
know you're a photographer. You have RAW. And if you want to upload in RAW, you're not going to have unlimited RAW. And
Well,
he's
we
like,
know
oh,
Victor is a Google head, so he wants everything under his account, which is fine. I don't condemn that at all. But you're right.
Google
You
head.
gotta check your facts first.
I've
You gotta
never
make
heard
sure you
that
know what.
term.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay, Google.
Yeah.
What is a Google head? It's just a big picture of Victor. Like, oh, it's Victor.
Vic. Oh man. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it's some people will just it's love the convergence of having one account to access all. But for
I
me, I've always like been I want to get the best thing, and I don't care whether I have to have 10 logins. I'm just gonna use the best thing.
Right.
So
And that's
I that's what I'm on SmugMug. I'll disclose that. I used to be on Zenfolio, but I'm a huge photographer nut. I need to know what f-stop I'm using when I'm shooting. That kind of stuff, I shoot in RAW. I need to know my histograms. But when I heard this news, I go, this is nuts. Now, what kind of features are they going to be able to offer if they offer the kind of... Now, that's when I talked to you about it,
okay. So
and you were
what they're
mentioning
doing
high
is
resolution thing.
they're organizing it in terms of like features of editing photographs and things like that. They have Snapseed, which they bought Nick about 3 years ago. And Snapseed has been the it-all be-all photography editing application, not only for Android but iOS, and I freaking love it. It makes me look like a freaking genius when I take photographs, and I'm going to continue using that. But within the actual Photos application, what it's doing is that especially if you group your photos, if you allow your photos to have the location tag on them, you can look for photos as locations or even as things. So it'll contextually know, hey, I want to look at all the photos of dogs. So you type in the search query within the photo app, dogs, and it pulls up all the photos of dogs that you've ever taken that are linked to your Google
Wait,
Photos.
so is it doing based on image recognition or is it based on tagging?
Recognition. You
Okay,
won't have to tag.
okay.
I actually have a live.
How accurate is that?
Huh?
How
I don't.
accurate
I
is
don't
that?
know. I don't know. If you have a cousin that looks like a dog, I can't help you.
Like, so if
Um,
you have like basically a bunch of photos of dogs sitting on your, I don't know, on your on your ottoman, and you just took a picture of your family room, and all of a sudden it's in your dog section. That can
yeah,
happen.
yeah, that could totally happen. But at the same time, that's kind of what you want. Now, what you don't want is if you said, I want a picture of the ottoman, and for whatever reason, you get a ton of pictures of the dogs on the ottoman. It's like, no, I just wanted couch. Just couch. I just want couch. And that could be something else too. I have a live correction from Victor. I guess he's one of the people watching right now. Go to sleep, Victor. He said he wasn't moving off Flickr. He's going to continue using Flickr. He's going to continue using backing up to both. And that was one thing that Brad that you brought up that you're on SmugBug. I recommend to everybody out there, don't have your stuff in one place because you never know what happens with that
Yep,
one place. I mean,
exactly.
when Yahoo bought Flickr, we
Right.
were to a certain degree lucky that they didn't sunset it and completely dismantle it. We still use Flickr, and they've improved that since then. When Google bought Picasa, a lot of
Right.
Picasa users were like,
Yep. That's right.
what's going to happen? And they're
Yep.
still mad
I
about
was
a
one of
lot of
those
the
guys.
things. Yeah,
I was one of those guys. I was a
right,
Picasa
exactly.
guy. Yeah.
But to a degree, I mean, it's Google and it's Yahoo, and they have billions and millions of dollars. But there
Hmm.
might be, something might happen. So I always recommend uploading to. I always recommend uploading to at least 3 services. So what I do is I do OneDrive, Google, Facebook, and then also onto my external hard drive here at the house. But according to Victor, the facial recognition is pretty good. Um, oh, and he's adding something else too. Now you can. You know how Google has the Auto Awesome thing?
Hmm.
Before you couldn't necessarily set up your own Auto Awesome. Google kind of had to do it for you. Now you would be able to do Auto Awesomes not only on your phone but also do it from the web. So there have been many times, especially Victor and I both had a family reunion down in San Jose, and we took tons of photos, and took photos and videos, and my phone created an auto awesome based off of the time, the GPS location, but then it also put in some pictures of me at the store. I'm like, what? I don't need this. I can edit that on my phone, but I couldn't edit that on my computer. Now you can edit that or create that on your computer. So um, yeah, and so there's some pretty advanced auto tagging, and you can make your collages, make your movies, and it stacks up pretty well against some of the other competitors that are
Yeah.
out there.
That's how I see that too.
I wonder what Microsoft is going to do because with Windows 10 they have announced in OneDrive the layout has improved vastly, and I know
Hmm.
people like Paul Thurrott, who's had a longer experience with that, have have agreed. Say yes, it's much better. You don't have to scroll and scroll and scroll. You can just go to the exact date or at least the exact month and year you're looking at. But Microsoft, they don't have the greatest of photo editing tools. And as a Microsoft employee, this is my opinion and no reflection on the company. But the photo editing tools are kind of uh, you need to use something else.
Photoshop.
At least Photoshop
Photoshop or
Express.
Lightroom at least. At least Lightroom.
Yeah, well, people, for the average person doesn't want to pay for Lightroom though. That's
That's a good
right.
point.
I mean, but that's why, like on Android or iOS, using Snapseed, I go back to that. It's just phenomenal. Like it's free. It used to be $15. I paid $15 to get that on my iPad. Now it's freaking free. So it's free, and it does some beautiful imagery, and you can make yourself look like Trey Ratcliffe or some other amazing people. And I know Trey, he uses Snapseed as well too. So he was the one that recommended it to Sarah Lane, who recommended it to me. So there's that. All right, we talked a lot about Android M, and we still don't know what the M stands for. I'm going on record. I'm saying Milky Way.
Milky Way.
Milky Way, because there is a Mars bar called Milky Way.
Okay.
And at the beginning of the Google I/O conference, they had like a 15-minute intro into the actual conference, and the 5 minutes of that was using like Google Maps / Google Earth imagery of our whole Milky Way galaxy. So like, aha! Aaron Newcomb brought it up actually when I was at Twitch. So I kind of agree with it. It's either Milky Way or marshmallow. And if it's anything else like this macadamia nut cookie, I can't even go there. Let's go ahead and move on because we are just about an hour over. Android Wear, nothing new. Very disappointed with that. I was so excited to see what they were going to come out with Android Wear. Maybe something other than a watch, and it was just, hey, this is what we're doing with our watches. Yeah. Great. What's new about the watches? Okay, let's move on. I was like, what the hell? Like, there was nothing about it. I was very disappointed. But there was something that we talked about back in 2012 when I first started with Lazy Tech Guys, was the idea that Google with Android at home would be able to control your home through smart home assistants and things like that. And Google has revealed that they're working on a home communications integration process called, I guess operating system that uses Android called Brillo. Brillo not being the brand name, but Brillo being the Spanish word meaning shine, which I just learned today too. And then on that, they're going to be using a platform on top of that called Weave, which is an open source platform. So this could be the new standard. And I say that with a grain of salt because everything is a new standard, right? I mean, there's a standard for the standard, and we need standards to have the standard. And that's the meme that Sean sent you that other time that we did the podcast.
Yeah.
But if they can make this standard
adoptable.
Adoptable, viable, and just like, oh yeah, why the hell not? But put it into to our applications. Because I'm using this. I'm using this Netcam from Belkin, and then I also have another Belkin Wemo sensor. Then I have a LifeX sensor. And they all have different apps on my phone. And I could obviously use, what's it called, Smart Things, which is Samsung's company now, and they kind of integrate all that into just one hub, but it's still all these different waves. There's Z waves and Blu-rays and F waves, I don't know. There are all these things. And if Weave is as good as they say it is, maybe it could, but I doubt that all these OEMs want Google to be the, even though Android is kind of the big player in the mobile space, I doubt all these other OEMs want to follow to Google again and say, okay, well, let's go the Google route for our standards and integrate. I think what would be best is if the sensor had both Z-Wave, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, whatever it is, and Weave. But I don't know if that's possible, or how much more that would cost, or if it's even feasible, if that's more of a headache than anything else.
Yeah. Is it like best use of resources?
Yeah.
That's the big thing. Yeah, I
Android
mean,
Pay is getting closer and realer. This is kind of a rebranding of Android Wallet, Google
mm,
Wallet.
mm,
They didn't really touch on anything that was too exciting. When Apple Pay came out, Tim Cook was on stage and saying, we with Apple Pay, you can go to a Coke machine and buy Coke. Like, okay, hey, that's basically what Google did today too. Like, you can go to all these NFC tag machines, and I guess with Android
yeah.
Pay, they've opened it up a little bit more for it to work with more of these NFC stations. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much the same idea.
Mm, mm.
And it's going to be pre-installed and supported by the not just the chip manufacturers, but also by the carriers. So AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile are all going to have Android Pay pre-installed on the Android phone. So
So
that's
no
cool.
more. What's the other payment gateways that you were doing before? I mean, we
Google
mentioned
Wallet.
it before. Not Google Wallet. Those carriers were actually trying to do something themselves.
Oh well, there was Verizon had ISIS,
That's it.
which turned into SoftCard,
Hmm.
which was sold. I forget who bought it, but they said
Google.
they was it Google who bought it? Yes,
I don't
Google bought
know.
it.
Oh,
Yeah, they bought it.
well,
And
that
so
makes sense then, right? So now
yeah,
it makes it. Yeah.
yeah, because I remember when they bought it, and I had this discussion with Victor because he's also on Verizon, and we both have Android phones. We both use soft card, very loosely. I think like once or twice. But then when
Mm.
Google Wallet became officially available, not only to just look at your money, but actually to pay with things, I'm using Google Wallet way more than I've ever used before. And so when they made this announcement with Android Pay, I think it just is going to solidify the adoption rate a lot better because of the help that Apple Pay's done. You know,
Mm.
so
Why do you think the adoption rate? Well, maybe not the adoption rate is probably not the best words to use. Why do you think the usage is not as high despite the volume of users that are using Android?
well, I mean,
So you
I've
have
said
5 million users, right? You have all of these guys that depend on, all of these vendors that are saying, we have now Android Pay, we have Apple Pay. But
right.
for every like 10 Apple Pay, customers, there's one Google or maybe none that are not doing that. Why do you think that's the case? Do you think it's just demographics? Do you think it's just, the user is just like, I just bought an Android phone yesterday. I got it for free. I got this free Samsung Galaxy S something.
I think it's education. I mean, when I use education is one, privacy is another. For whatever reason, Apple tends to have a better stake when it comes to privacy. Uh,
Trust.
Trust. That's actually
That's
more
the
of what I
thing.
was trying to say. People trust Apple with their credit card. I mean, we know this because Apple is the largest company to have the most amount of credit cards on hand.
But they also
Second,
trust the brand, right? It's like
right, exactly.
there's a
Google, on the
different
other
level of
hand,
trust. Yeah.
yeah, people don't. I mean, people use Google, but when you talk about Google and privacy, there are conferences about Google and privacy and lack thereof or whatever. There's not conferences about Apple and privacy. There's maybe a few little things in the news every once in a while, but Google continues to have privacy concerns and trust concerns. And
Uh-huh.
I think that what Apple did with Apple Pay, they made NFC payments real. They made it that the everyday person with the newer iPhone device could just use this, and this is the new method of, at least here in the Western world, of how things are going to be moving forward.
Right.
And although Google and Windows Phone were first,
Yes.
it just they didn't, customers didn't have that trust. They didn't have the education that it was even there. Plus,
Yeah.
and I mentioned this before, the soft card app and the Google Wallet app both were very clunky. They
Yeah.
were not user friendly at all. Now with Android Pay, very similar to Apple Pay,
Mhm.
especially with the fingerprint scanner, you would be able to just, fingerprint scan your thumb or whatever, tap the NFC tag, and then go.
Mhm.
Now, I actually do have to open up the Google Wallet app to even use Android Pay slash Google Wallet. So there
Mhm.
is kind of one extra step that I have to do, uh, but what's effectively is the same idea of just using your fingerprint. But um, I think that what Android is doing now is is definitely just going to make the idea of NFC payments a lot more
We're just
widespread
setting up.
adoption.
We're just
Yeah.
setting it up. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
Like the whole point really is just we have this feature now. Whether there's 500 million of you, 10 million, or 500,000, it's there. You know, and hopefully the hardware guys are going to adopt it all, and you guys have NFC on it. You know, so um, my thing was I've always had this argument with others who are using Apple Pay, and I think one of the biggest things is the fact that it's just to me it's cultural. If you go to a lot of the different countries, NFC is like not a big deal. They just go on about it. Japan, it's probably like a 70% adoption rate in terms of transactions, you know what I mean? Short of just having your battery dead. Now over here, it's different, right? Because it's easy to just whip out your wallet and then run your card, you know, rather than, and you're on your other hand, you're just texting someone, you know. Um, but more and more, as more people are starting to get used to convergence, I'm just hoping that there'll be a little bit more diversity in the transactions. To me, more importantly, I think the bigger thing is the security. So, and we see those things in the headlines. Simple, you know, credit
Right.
cards
And
can be just seen right off the bat. And still now, there's a lot of these mom and pop, you know, shops that could easily adopt Apple Pay and Google Wallet or Android Pay easily. So, um, it's just a matter of time, I think.
yeah, and Android Pay already has a ton of partners. Baby is R Us, Best Buy. Best Buy was actually one of the first companies to say no to Apple Pay, and they're eventually doing Apple Pay by the end of this year. But they said no first, but they're gonna do Android Pay. Excuse me, McDonald's, Payless, not Payless, Petco, Jamba Juice, Toys R Us, Staples. You know, the important places. And then I think when it comes to like security, they are also doing like tokenization as well too.
Oh, they have to.
Yeah,
They would have to. Yeah, it's
definitely.
awesome.
All right, let's go ahead and move on and move away from Android and talk a little bit about Android and when it comes to virtual reality. Virtual reality in Google was kind of the moonshot about a year ago when they announced Cardboard, and Cardboard was kind of the butt of a joke. You know, you're looking at all these, you know, the Oculus Rift wasn't even, and it's still not even a real thing to consumers. You had the Samsung Gear VR, which was $200, and all these other kind of headsets that were really, really expensive. And Google comes along and says, hey, for less than $30, you can do VR too. And it was kind of, you know, we all saw this, and I have one here. I actually got this one from Volvo. I got it for free from Volvo, and but what they announced today was the new cardboard, which is bigger because it supports phones up to 6 inches minus the case, so take the case off, and it also supports iOS. So if you want to develop a virtual reality in iOS, you would be able to do that, which is really awesome. And you know, to take it another step further, we've seen 360 virtual reality videos on YouTube. I believe Freddie W did a 360 video with one of his colleagues as well, and they are working on a rig called Jump, and they're taking new software that they've assembled in literally an assembler, and one of their first partners is GoPro. So they have 16 cameras on a GoPro, 16 GoPro cameras on a rig, and you'll be able to compute all of that and then play it through YouTube. And if you're watching it on YouTube through your phone with Gear VR, you'd feel like you're in a more immersed experience of whatever it is that you're looking at. They really touched on this idea of being a really great educational tool for you to be able to, sit down and be in places that you couldn't ever go to in your lifetime, like, Antarctica. I'm never going there, much as I want to say I will. I don't like cold, so I'm not going there. But I'd love to at least, get somewhat of a $30 version of it, and that's pretty cool. So, I don't know. I mean, I was watching Google I/O, and like I said at the beginning of this, I kind of set myself up for failure, expecting something really, really awesome. And I'd say the two awesome things was Google Now on tap and Photos, and we already heard about Photos. So there's only one really cool thing that they announced, and everything else was, it was nice, but it was kind of a recap And Ron Richards from All About Android and Image Comics, he mentioned that we have to remember that this is a developer conference, and a lot of the hardware upgrades are not going to be announced at Google I/O anymore. And he's right. So we separately had the Chromebook Pixel 2 announced, about a month and a half ago. We're probably going to have a new Chromecast announced sometime later on this summer. We're going to have new Nexuses announced later on summer at their own events, if not just standard press releases like they did with the Chromebook Pixel. So as long as we can get into that new frame of reference, that new frame of mind, we can kind of see where Google is going, which is what Apple does. Apple doesn't give anything away. People pay $1,400 to go to WWDC, and as developers, they get a crap ton of good data, connections, and
That's really what it
new
comes down
services.
to.
And that's
That's
what
the
it comes
thing.
down to.
Yeah, because
Google,
even with you could spin a whole bunch of headlines with it, but how will those headlines convert to actual buying, paying, loyal customers? You know what I mean? How can you convert those? How can you make those numbers? That's going to be the big thing. And more companies are being more wise about it. I mean, you and I had actually the privilege and the joy to observe and be in some of those conferences where they're just all about whiz bang and all about just throwing as much smoke as they can. Hopefully, yeah, that's it. And it's one of those things where it's just, um, companies are becoming more wise now. I mean, the kind of stunts that Google is doing, they're spending in the hundreds of thousands just to spend these huge
PR
headlines.
moves. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's what it was. It really was.
Yeah. I mean, they
Um,
were awesome. I mean, like they were great to write about for us. They
Well,
were it was
yeah,
a
when they
candy
did
for
the,
us,
the
you know.
Google
It was a
Glass,
treat.
jump out of an airplane thing, it really
That was
made
huge.
that was awesome because it made Google Glass like in a something that you really wanted. You're like, I need to find $1,500. Like I want to be able to do
I
that.
know,
And
but
then a
that
month later,
didn't
Google
happen.
Glass is the
Yeah.
stupidest thing ever, right? So they're realizing that maybe we don't need to go all balls to the wall. Maybe take a step back and look at what's important. And what's important are these guys, these thousands of guys in this room, and the improvements to Android M. And with Android M, that is available today as a developer preview for the Nexus 5, 6, and the Nexus 9. So go ahead and download that. I'm not downloading that. I'm too scared. um, that's my daily driver, man. I'm scared. Um, and the new Photos app is available. The VR stuff that's coming later on this summer. There's a bunch of new. We didn't even touch on what they've done for the devs, like the Android Studio. They're doing a cloud-based uh, testing. So even if you live in India and you want to test on all these phones that you can't, or vice versa, you can't test on like Micromax phones. Google has this cloud-based testing method where they can test your app on the top 20 phones of that region,
Oh
and
yeah. They're
they'll
just
send you.
virtually creating those now, just like virtual machines are.
Yeah,
So you can just
exactly.
basically
And
set
so
them
that's
up now.
all incorporated
Yeah.
into the Android Studio.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
Polymer 1.0 is now available, which is basically I see it as like web animation kind of, but it's not only mobile but also desktop. Um, they're A/B testing for developers through the Play Store. So you could push out an app and do A/B testing live with people that are downloading it. So Rad, you get one version of the app, I get another version of the app, and the developers see what version is getting what kind of rating. If you have multiple apps as a developer, you can get a homepage in the Google Play Store. So
Oh,
that's
that's
cool.
nice.
Yeah, it
That's
really
cool.
is. I mean, I always go to like I click on Rovio for example, and like
Mm,
show me all the apps that Rovio has,
right.
and it does. It's like okay, that's cool. Now you'll have a homepage for Rovio. So hey, we're Rovio. We're from Sweden or Finland, wherever, and we made Angry Birds.
Sweden. I know.
Are you from
Sit in my
Sweden?
spate.
Yeah.
Now while I open my refrigerator.
And we like meatballs. No.
Yeah.
But they'll have their own homepage. For parents, Victor, there's going to be a lot more parental controls, also apps that are dedicated to 6 and under, 7 to 12, 14 and up. with like this little parent star, so you know that it's like parent approved or whatever. Um, I don't know. I think they're making a lot of great strides. Again, things that aren't amazing, but they are things that are going to make the ecosystem that much better than it was a year ago.
Yeah.
The problem
That's right.
is,
Yeah.
a year
Is
ago they did L, and here we are a year later, and it's only 10 to 11%. So a year from now, we'll have M out, whatever they call it, marzipan. God, I hope they don't call it that. Um, and are we going to have the same predicament where it's only like 12% that has Android M, or is it going to be adopted much faster at a faster rate because of these new improvements? I don't know. I can't really say. I'm no soothsayer. But what I can tell you is that the adoption rate on on L or Lollipop has been kind of abysmal to me. I remember when they launched Kit Kat and Jelly Bean, uh, it was like maybe 11% halfway into its iteration, but now we're way past the halfway mark of it being around. So
hmm
I don't know whether to blame Google or Samsung or LG or the carriers or all of them. I really don't. And this is the it all be all argument of fragmentation of upgrades and things like that. But um, I'm still very excited. Was there anything else that you want to touch on before we end this?
No, I guess it's going to be very interesting only because there's some serious philosophy in terms of how operating systems are going to operate in the future. You know, you got the CEO from Microsoft mentioning the mobile first, cloud first philosophy, something which is both Google, Microsoft, and Apple are all doing. They all still believe in the rich client. You know what I mean? But one company now believes that there's one operating system that can scale responsibly, and there's one now that just bought a company of small ones doing IoT, and then Android, which has a range of devices that it covers, and then you have Chrome. So um, earlier you were mentioning how Chrome is somewhat being embedded in Android apps, but at some point one of these are going to have to take over, or one of them are going to have to converge into a single OS. It's going to happen one way or
Yeah.
another.
And we're already
So,
kind of seeing that you can run Android apps on Chrome now.
mhm,
Um, not many people are doing it. I'm still trying to
no,
find out the use case
use case.
scenario of why would you want to go to the Bank of America app instead of just bankofamerica.com when you're already in the browser?
Yep,
Um, which is why I've been kind of weary about the whole Chrome web store because that's all it really does is it has kind of a
it's a
simple.
shortcut.
It's a shortcut, but I also
Yes.
have my bookmarks, and they've just recently upgraded the bookmarks app in Chrome too. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm like, it's the
Yeah.
same thing.
One thing I wish Chrome would need to move to is they need to go to 64-bit. That's the biggest thing that needs to happen right
Well,
now.
for security too, definitely.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean the biggest thing right now is it's really bloated. Can you I've been a huge advocate for Chrome, but I recently just switched to Firefox. It's now the faster browser for me. So but the biggest thing right now is Chrome does have a lot of the nice perks with it. I use Get Pocket to so I don't have to worry about what platform I'm on when I want to look for my bookmarks.
Yeah.
And I kind of like my bookmarks to look a little bit prettier. Um,
Pretty
but
bookmarks.
yeah, pretty bookmarks. And but for the most part, I just want to see how these philosophies pan out because it's going to be very interesting. How like I see ourselves using Microsoft stuff and Google stuff right now as we're building things. It's going to be very interesting from a
Yeah, and I
development
don't
point.
want to obviously dwell on it too much, but Microsoft's new Microsoft Edge browser looks to be a possible contender in the near future. But obviously, we won't really know until all the uh, all the issues of that have been ironed out. And Microsoft has even said like things like the extensions that it's going to support,
Mhm,
like Chrome extension, that's not even going to be in the initial build of Windows 10 later this summer. So,
mhm, mhm.
all right. Anyways, that's pretty much it. Rad, it has been a pleasure. It's so great to see you back on the
Good
mic.
to be on.
Um,
Good to be
what do you want to tell our listeners and viewers that that you can tell, or if whatever you want to let people know about.
Well, if you guys have any comments or want any tips, programming, business-wise, or whatever, you can get a hold of me at radcastro on Twitter, or of course leave a comment at comments@lazytechguys.com.
Great. And then for me, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I am at LTG Tony. I've actually started using the Lazy Tech Guys Twitter handle a lot more, specifically for Meerkat and Periscope. And I'm actually periscoping right now, and we have a whopping donut of viewers. We actually had like 20 viewers for a second. But
Really?
remember, they're only hearing me. They can't hear
Yeah.
you. So they're just like, this guy's just talking to himself with headphones. That's so
You could just use
stupid.
a sock, say, this is him.
I,
This
so,
is
Rad,
him.
what do you think? I think it's
This is
great. It's
great.
like, that's not how Rad talks at all. So yeah, you could find me there. Otherwise, you can just go to about.me/tninja3000, and obviously go to our website, lazytechguys.com, and check out our YouTube channel, Lazy Tech TV. We have a bunch of new Let's Play videos. I know Andrew checked out a beta for really cool FPS, if you're into that sort of thing. And I just put up a review for the LG G4, which
Yeah.
I've got to say is by far the best Android device of 2015. And I don't
Well,
say that lightly. All right, Rad, thank you very much. The one
thank you.
viewer, thank you very much. We know who you are. We know where you live. You guys take care, and we will talk to you in the next one. Have a good one.